In this podcast, we chat about the win against Swansea. We give our praise and place nominations, look ahead to Watford, and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the trap.
Ravanelli coming alive again. Janino wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny and Tom. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And finally, we've got a win to talk about. On Saturday, Boro secured the first win of the season against Swansea by beating them 2-1 at the Riverside Stadium. And it moves Boro to 18th in the championship table. Tom, how are you feeling after Boro's first win of the season? I think it was a good one for us too, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, I enjoyed the hospitality yesterday, but in terms of the result, much better, much more optimistic now. It's mad how much of a difference Matt Clark made yesterday. For me, I've just thought we looked so much more of a complete team, and it was just complete 180 of the performance at Reading. You know, I went into the game predicting 2-1. Unfortunately, I was right, but at no point in that game did I think we were going to concede. I just thought we looked really solid. So, yeah, massive improvement from Reading. Just gives me confidence moving into the next couple of games, which queues up us to get beat off Watford about 4-0. But
yeah, that's probably about right. We should wait until you hear our Watford preview, and that is going to probably cement that prediction fairly soon. But yeah, I'm really happy. I think we're up and running now, and hopefully we can kickstart our season a little bit more. I wouldn't say the performance was as good as what we've seen maybe against the likes of Stoke, and some of the half performances that we've seen in previous games have been relatively good but better. But in a game where we actually lost our XG battle for the first time, ironically, we won the game. And it's just nice to see us really kickstart things now and get that that horrible feeling of not winning off our back, and hopefully we can continue and try and get ourselves back up the league now. But let's look at the Swansea game, Tom, because Wilder made 2 changes to the side that lost against Reading. Liam Roberts came in to make his league debut, and for Zach Steffen. Matt Clark, who signed earlier in the week, made his first game for the Boro as well, coming in to replace Mark Bowler. Obviously, we were leading 2-0 at half-time. Joe Peru scored from a penalty spot to make it quite a tight end to the game where it shouldn't have really been. And also Ben Cabango got sent off as well. But more about that a little bit later on. But Tom, how would you assess the overall game? Were you happy with that?
yeah, I mean, like I say, it did look like a completely different performance to Reading. I thought we looked a lot more solid at the back, which, you know, I don't want to kind of take too much away from Mark Bowler. I think he's been putting in kind of like as good a performance as you didn't expect in that kind of like makeshift left centre back role. But with Clark there, as I mentioned, we just looked so much more complete, and especially down that left hand side, it just offered us something so much more with him, Giles, and Moet being able to kind of interplay with each other. And then just in terms of the performance, I was expecting another kind of tight game between Boro and Swansea, but during the first half, I just thought, you know what, we can probably get about 3 or 4 here. Because I didn't think they played well at all. I thought we did extremely well in forcing them to make mistakes, and he got the goal off the first one. And yeah, just it ended up being a pretty good performance. Like you said earlier, though, not as good as we played against Stoke, and you know deserved to win. But it was enough to get the confidence up, I think. And I think when we reached the last 8 minutes of the match, which, by the way, where did that injury time come from? I think the players and the team must have been listening to the pod last week when we were talking about seeing the game out at Stoke, because you know they just kind of saw it out extremely well, took it into the corner, held it up, weren't risking too much. They knew how vital that 3 points is going to be, and hopefully that'll be the 3 points to really kind of kickstart our season as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, the overall performance and the way that we set up, probably at the start, I think a lot of Boro fans, wanted that 3-5-2, wanted to see Muniz enforce up front, or maybe have two up front essentially. But I think they're going one up front. What more again? Are we going to score the goals needed? And to be honest, I could understand the frustrations on that early on. But when the game started, noticed that Swansea were in that 4-3-3. The patterns of play was very robotic, very systematic, and how they operated. And I think the way that Boro set up in the first half, in that 3-5-1-1, it paid dividends in that first half, and that gave us a platform in the second, to see the game out when we needed to. And yes, it was a little bit nervy, and it shouldn't have been. But I'm just delighted that we got the 3 points and able to look ahead to Watford now and hopefully kick on from there. But like I mentioned there, Tom, Swansea had a lot of possession in that first half and in the second half. It was expected, their average possession 67% or so far this season. But how were we able to get the better of the Swans, especially in that first half?
Well, as I just mentioned there, I think it was hitting them on the counter and forcing them into mistakes, and I'm pretty sure Wilder alluded to that in his post-match press conference as well. We like you said, they weren't actually doing anything with their passing; they were just going side to side a lot. It was very reminiscent of us last week at Reading. So us kind of allowing them to have that possession and then draw them out of position, hit them on the counter, and press the centre backs and midfield into making mistakes. I thought that worked extremely well for us. Allowed us to limit their space, and obviously the first goal came from a mistake from their centre midfielder. I think it was. I think the EFL show said he was only like 18 and like making his debut or something. So unfortunately,
it wasn't his debut. But I can't remember his name. It's left my brain. But
he was number 45, wasn't he? But yeah, I can't imagine that's going to be something from his young career he's going to look back on very well. But yeah, I thought that allowed the game to open up a little bit as well. And then after that, the left-hand side worked a great combination for the second.
Yeah, I think that shape, as like I mentioned, and the way we set up yesterday was really did pay dividends. I think trying to occupy that midfield space. The press was really good on the first goal, because the way that we were set up, every time the ball came inwards, Middlesbrough's press was a bit more aggressive, because we knew that's where the main errors would come, and that's where they'd be exposed as well. Because the way that Swansea do set up, it looked like maybe like a 2-3-5 probably, when they had the ball and they were trying to pin our wing backs back, and try and hold the game and with the possession style. But the problem that Swansea have, and I think it'd be the real frustrations, is like you mentioned there was no real play with intent yesterday, I thought, from Swansea. I thought they could have done a lot more with the ball. The tempo has to be better. They tried that switch of play time and time again, but it was just too slow. And I think if you're a Swansea fan, I think you'd be really frustrated yesterday, because the quality wasn't good enough. And when they did slip up, they got punished for it. And I think, similar to us, we've seen it in previous games where the tempo, when it's just not right, it does leave you exposed when you're playing with those high wingers. And that's what you get. What's what happens when you get punished. But in terms of, you've already mentioned him, really, Tom. But Matt Clark yesterday, making his debut, man of the match as well from Mado, probably man of the match from us as well when we were watching him from the stands. But it really does prove how valuable a left centre back is, and especially the right left centre back as well, because he was tremendous yesterday, wasn't he?
Yeah, I feel like I could have just answered every question with Matt Clark on this and just talked about him for an hour, because it was just absolutely fantastic performance from. I think in terms of a debut performance, you do well to kind of remember too many Boro players having a better one than that in defence. But yeah, it definitely shows how much a proper solid left centre back was needed in that system. It opens up so many more kind of like passing lanes and avenues up the left-hand side of the pitch. And like I said, Bowler, we all knew was kind of like a makeshift in that position. And and last year McNair did okay. I think he's going to do much better on the right-hand side, but I think we covered it quite a few times last season. There were goals that were coming because they were played across McNair and he's not left-footed. So, he's having to swing with his right and he's already kind of behind the ball at that point. So, having that actual left-footer there and, such a solid player like Matt Clark as well, won quite a lot of headers yesterday. And I loved how kind of aggressive he was in the tackle as well. Really kind of just didn't let anyone past him. So I think that experience with him and Lenihan in our back line now, especially on that left-hand side, is just going to pay dividends for us throughout the season.
Yeah, it was Congreve on that right hand side before he got subbed, but it was like you could see that Boro did target him on that left hand, well, they're right on our left hand side. On Matt Clark, yeah, really really good. Interceptions are really key in key moments. Like you were saying there, the experience that he brings, and although he's still relatively quite young, good leadership skills which we could see from where we were sitting, and it looked like we've got a really good player in a snip at 2 million. Really, I know that Jacob Greaves was probably our first choice in that front, but I think with what we've brought in here, the experience is all a 6'2", 3, 4, whatever it is, doing overlaps who shouldn't be doing overlaps like that was tremendous to see, and I think he just fits the system so well. And they say Hull might have priced themselves out of a move, but we've got a fantastic player in Matt Clark, and I'm pretty sure we're going to come back to him in a moment when we go into the praising place. But we've seen Rodrigo Muniz as well yesterday, Tom. I think 40 minutes he came on. We've seen him yesterday when he came on for Duncan Watmore. Nearly scoring from the halfway line, of course. Well, say nearly. It was he didn't just get the connection just right. But what's your opinion on him? What did you think of his first 40 minutes in a Boro shirt?
Well, I mean, firstly, I love the confidence to even try that, but I don't think Wilder was too pleased, judging by his post-match interview. But no, I thought he was a good physical presence up front. Seemed to win a lot in the air, but he's not doesn't exactly look, like a kind of physical hold-up striker like Ikpeazu was for us or anything like that. It was he has a decent vertical leap on him and very good close control. So he's just picking things out of the air. And I think he's going to play that link-up striker role extremely well. He also seems a pretty good finisher as well. The fact that he was able to hit that cross in from Crooks the way he did. I mean, it's a shame he hit the post, but I didn't expect to see kind of anyone getting that much power on a shot from that sort of position where you're in that closely marked from a defender as well. Obviously, like I said, the less said about was 50-yarder, the better. But in terms of finishing on that volley, it was quite impressive. Just it deserved a goal.
Yeah, it did. Like the technique was superb as well, just to really shape you, just bring your body back and get the right connection. I think it's a couple of millimeters away from hitting the inside of the post and going in. And for me, I agree exactly with what you say there, Tom. Really good link-up player. I feel like if he had force with him, maybe we'll create a little bit more chances. And the more and more I was thinking yesterday's game, I was thinking we could really, maybe a 3-4-1-2 might even pay more dividends for us. With that link-up player from McGree, if he wants to drop back in, your two midfielders will drop a little bit deeper, so you play a double pivot, and that might help things. But obviously, you don't have to change too much. The performance has been relatively quite good, and I thought Muniz is in general. He showed the qualities I think that we need. And we might go on the market for another striker. But for me, he looks to me like a good signing just from the early doors, 40 minutes from what we've seen. I think it was a good account of himself, and I think a goal would have been deserved for his performance. But it was a bit nervy at the end, Tom. Swansea getting a penalty from the corner. It was hit Lenihan's arm. But do you think it was a penalty because we didn't have a clue at the time what the penalty was given for, and I've had to rewatch the video time and time again and the highlight and try and get the close-ups and all sorts. But it seems a bit harsh, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it was harsh. I can kind of understand why it was given because from the angle they showed on the AFL highlight show, it did look like it was at least going on target. I think a yellow card's extremely harsh in that situation because watching it back, there's absolutely nothing that Linehan can do to kind of get out of that situation. So I don't understand how you can even say that was even slightly intentional. I thought very unlucky to concede that penalty because, as I said earlier, with how solid we looked yesterday and how poor Swansea were, I didn't see us conceding at all.
I didn't at all. Honestly, we were cruising for games. But yeah, for me, like his body was turned. It hit the back. Obviously his arm that's behind him. So it's he's not even looking at the ball either. He's already passed it. So I just thought it was a bit harsh. I think when we're looking at, like, if you want to look at the Premier League from yesterday as well with Southampton, Man United, McTominay and his handball is far worse.
I know he was doing Harlem Globetrotter skills with it, wasn't
he? Yeah. thought he was just playing netball or something, you know what I mean? Just catching it, or basketball, whatever, just trying to throw it about. But yeah, I don't know. But I think it was a bit harsh, but it did make things a little bit more nervy towards the end. But the drama didn't stop. Tom Benkamango got sent off for a push on Isaiah Jones. But for Isaiah Jones, I want you to pack your bags and sun cream because you've just won a ticket to Shithouse Island.
Let me take you to a place where membership's a smiling face, brushing shoulders with the stars, where strangers take you by the hand and welcome you to Wonderland from beneath the Panama. Shithouse Island drinks are free, but in sunshine there's enough for everyone. All that's missing is the sea. But don't worry, you're a shit house.
Don't do videos when you piss.
Anyone who's listening, I couldn't encourage you to just tune into YouTube and watch that video anymore because stitches here.
That's funny, but well done to Isaiah Jones. You have now been the first recipient of the Shithouse Island for the season 2022-2023. But you've joined a very good selection of players that are already on there. But juggling the ball and causing a ruckus is enough for you to get a place on there. But for another place, we're going to talk about the Praising Place. The Praising Place is the place we like to give a praise to a player, a fan, chips and curry, all the hospitality food that me and Tom had yesterday, which was fantastic. And so probably the view that we had as well in the director's box, which is also fantastic. Work perks. But Tom, who gets your nomination this week?
Well, I mean, number one has to go to Matt Clark, really. As I said earlier, I think he was everyone's man of the match yesterday. Absolutely fantastic debut. And, look forward to seeing even more of him this season and what more's to come. And then other than him, Riley McGree, I thought had his best game this season so far. I think he's played in some games like the Sheffield United game where the physicality hasn't really kind of suited him. I think, I remember Sheffield United marking him quite tightly and he just couldn't get involved in that game at all. But I thought yesterday he played absolutely fantastic and probably got overshadowed a little bit by the debut of Clark and everyone talking about him. Because, like I say, it seemed like every touch of the ball he was getting, he was just knocking it into the right place to advance our attacks, and obviously capped it all off with a goal as well.
Yeah. I think my picks are very similar. Obviously, Matt Clark, I think what we've spoke about previously, I think his performance was just superb, top to bottom. There was no faults for me, the way he played out from the back was excellent. His defensive work was really good in terms of interceptions, and his positioning was excellent. He just gave a calm and collectedness. It was calm and collective performance from him. And the second person I want to praise this week is it's Liam Roberts. We heard him speak after the game. I think his mentality and is fantastic, but also he just really, really wants to be here and also wants to prove to Boro fans that he could be the number one for Boro. But in terms of making his debut, he was calm. He commanded his box really, really well. Things were very, just good in terms of his leadership traits, but also he brought that calmness to the defense as well. And I think when he wasn't comfortable, he just got rid of it Boro started again, and that was absolutely fine by me. You know, I do want Boro to play from the back because that does help generate more chances, probably not just obviously not in the building phase, but in the second and final thirds. You know, it brings a bit more progression, it's a bit more fluid. But sometimes you've just got to go along if you need to, and he just did that when we needed to. And for me, I know it's like quite a low barrier to say that, you know, made his debut, good mentality to be here, but I just think for someone making that step up, I think he was really, really good. But obviously, Stefan might get his place back in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I think he overall deserves a bit of praise just for his overall performance, and just hearing him speak after the game. It was really, really positive and really nice to hear as well. But let's move on to questions, Tom, because each week you're able to send a question in via Twitter, the Telegram chat, or email us at theborobreakdown@hotmail.com. And the first question we've got this week is from Danny, and he says, what type of midfielders do we need? Wilder wants 2 more, 1 CDM, 1 right centre midfield. Any suggestions and why? Tom, what type of midfielders do we need?
Well, I think at the right-hand side of midfield, we need to kind of replicate what we've got in terms of having Moat and McGree on the left-hand side. I think Crooks can play the same role as Moat quite well, but can't play the same role as McGree that well. So I think we need a more kind of direct attacking threat, technically good on that right-hand side, a bit more similar to McGree. I don't have any suggestions for that, although, we have been linked with Josh Windass today, who I think is number 10, right? So, possibly he could kind of slot in there, play similar to McGree if that link is true. And then CDM, we were sat a table over from a guy yesterday who may or may not have been Teddy Toomer. Definitely wasn't, but judging by what you've said about him playing in the Belgian league, Johnny, I think that's the ideal type of signing for us. Someone who's going to play that house and role, but bring a lot of energy to that centre defensive midfield role. Get aggressive in the tackle and aggressive with the interceptions as well, and just help the team kind of recover the ball and play out.
Yeah, I agree. I think Teddy Timu, or Teddy Shithouse, as you probably want to look at him, is a very, very good midfielder. Left-footed, good at his interceptions. He played more an advancing role. He's played more advanced role for USG, over in Belgium, and he's more of a box to box at times. But I feel like sometimes his interception play is that aggressive. You just think, well, you do quite a good job at CDM anyway. So for me, it could potentially be a signing. That right centre midfield role, it's a difficult one, really. I think Martin Piero would have been superb this year for that, but we've let him go out on loan, and I think it's just I'd be intrigued to see who we bring in on that front. But I don't think it's a position that we should be stressed too much about. We can change things if we need to. I think maybe probably the centre defensive midfield role is probably the one that we need to secure first, and then maybe another striker if we want to do it and stockpile a load of strikers. The next question about strikers is from John. He says, which striking options will we have at the end of the window, and have Watmore and Akpom done enough to be part of Wilder's plans? There's the Watmore and Akpom side of things. I think that if there is a striker to leave, or strikers to leave, I think Watmore and Corburn's probably going to be the people that will. And no disrespect to Watmore, he's good. But I think with what Dana mentioned last week, he is replaceable. With Matthew Hoppe coming in, very similar player in terms of being a good presser and trying to cause problems for the defense and trying to get in behind teams. Matthew Hoppe does that. But also when we're trying to elevate ourselves to be a top 6 and above, does Watmore fit that place? I think it's a bit, I don't know, to be honest. I'm a bit undecided on him, but if he was to go, I think it would be Watmore. I think Akpom's probably done enough for now. Wilder said he's done enough, but unless a bid comes in for him, I can't see him going anywhere at all. Because I don't think Boro really want to sell him now from his early performances this season and what he could bring. But Tom, what striking options do you think we'll have? Do you think it'll be who do you think's gonna go? Do you think it'll be Watmore and Coburn if once Coburn gets fit?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be tough to call if Coburn gets a loan move, won't it? Because I mean, he was out for 6 to 8 weeks, which I think took him to like past the end of the transfer window. So, in terms of a medical, I'm not entirely sure how that might work.
Mm.
But I think a loan move would do him the world of good. I think I said previously, if he's playing in a team where he's getting regular football in a system with two up front, or one with a number 10, it's going to be very similar to how we play, and he can come back and kind of hit the ground running next season. In terms of between Watmore and Akpom, I feel like it would be Watmore. That's kind of based on what Wilder was saying about Akpom, saying he's done enough to stay, and I think there was actually a quote saying he won't be leaving. Obviously, every player has this price, but I don't see anyone kind of coming in off the back of a few good performances at the start of this season with silly money to try and sign Akpom. I think in terms of what more, what you've said there and what Dana said last week, it is true. He is replaceable. I mean, he's been a great player for us since he has signed. When we signed him, we were severely lacking, and in that department, he brought a lot of energy to it. And I still think he is a good option off the bench. I was a bit surprised with our striking options at the moment that he did start yesterday, but I thought he did extremely well there. But looking at the whole kind of situation, he, I believe, is in the last year of his contract, and he's also kind of managing a knee injury every game from what we've heard. So if we were to kind of cash in now, I think it would be our last chance to do so. Obviously, if he gets to January, he's kind of free to negotiate with other clubs to the end of the season, isn't he? So if we want to get any money for Watmore, which as well, we've got free transfer, I can't imagine the wages are too high. It would be looked at as solid profit made off this player. I think within the next week, it's the last chance to kind of do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. But we'll come on to the deadline day stuff in just a moment. But the final two questions we've got, one's from Nick, and he says, should Wilder have made changes earlier than he did before their goal? Midfielder was shot and they were sitting way too deep. Is that inevitable? It was inevitable that they were going to score. We did make change. Obviously, we did make changes, defensive changes. If that bring on like Tommy Smith, and also Dale Fry came on towards the end. We were just stockpiling centre backs at that point. Obviously, when Mark Ball came on as well. So obviously, maybe Wilder just thought, let's just get the result. But in terms of Boro's deep defensive shape and getting deeper and deeper, I think it was intriguing to me to see Swansea come out second half, who they looked like it was a team who was like, stop playing our robotic system, even though we continue to play our robotic system, and just try to be a bit more aggressive and try and get our tempo up, because that's where Swansea were really lacking, and that forced Boro to be a little bit deeper, and they try to defend the lead from that. But sitting deep sometimes isn't always a bad thing. When you go into that low block shape, you're trying to limit the chances and get someone in. If someone comes into the box, you've got enough bodies in there to get rid of it and start again. And we there is parts in games where you're going to see that you can't always be gung-ho. You can't always have the control of the game. 90 minutes is a long, long time. Like, obviously, everyone knows who's played the game. And, when you get tired and teams start to get on top and they start to, get more possession, it starts to click for them to get a bit of rhythm, because rhythm in general, it doesn't get talked about enough in football. But if once a team gets a bit of rhythm and how you disrupt it is very, very important. And I think just Swansea got a bit of rhythm in the second half, and it was important for Boro to keep that shape and catch them on the counter attack, because that's where we were going to be. While it did make the changes, but I think for me, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing by sitting deep. But I can see where the frustrations are, because you want the outlet, you want to escape that that pressure, and you do so with your wing backs for Boro, and we just didn't make probably the most of it at the time. But in terms of the performance, I thought it was relatively quite good. We limited Swansea's rhythm for long periods of the game. We stopped them from being progressive, but when they get going and when they start to really play, I think they'd be a dangerous side. I think to compare them, like Manchester City, in terms of like a systematic team, a team that focuses so much on rhythm. You know, they're kind of like Manchester City and Swansea are kind of like, do you know why like your Wi-Fi where you turn it off and on and off again? It's steady, isn't it, all the time? But when you turn it off again, it's like that bit, like oh god, that minute or 2 minutes of disruption is how you get the best out of those teams, or we'll get the best out of your team to disrupt them even more, and that's where you're going to score more goals. But for me, I had no problem with sitting deep second half yesterday. I thought it was a bit natural when you're 2-0 up at half time. Team's going to come out more and try to implement their style in the game, and I think we did well to get over the line there. But in terms of the last question, it's from Rob, and he says, "How can Boro learn to finish games off?" Today could have been a very another Stoke. For me, Tom, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think we learned yesterday how to finish a game off, or is there still improvements to be made?
Well, yeah, I mentioned earlier, like,
Mm.
as soon as it hit that last 8 minutes, we were trying to take it in the corner, waste as much time as possible. And I've got absolutely no problem with us doing that. I think, the only way it could have been another Stoke, came from their penalty. But just to kind of go back to the last question, even before they got the penalty, as I think I've said multiple times, I never saw them actually scoring. The momentum was in their favour, but we never looked kind of vulnerable to conceding at that point. So, I wasn't kind of too, nervous about the defence or anything. And, seeing the game off, I still kind of wasn't worried. They were down to 10 men, but, they were having most of the ball. They didn't look like the team that was down to 10 men, but we defended really well. And I think we did everything that was needed within that 8 minutes of injury time and kind of a little bit beyond that as well, to make sure we went away with the 3 points there.
Yeah, I agree. But also the Sun, Boro normally dominate games really possession wise, and we really implement our style. So I think sometimes when we've been looking at our XG in like the last few weeks and how important it's been, but Boro haven't been getting the rub of the green in front of goal. I think once we start to finish our chances, games should be dead and buried. I think we've just been really unfortunate over the last few games, and I think it's a valid point that these points get brought because we're not finishing games off, but then teams are punishing us defensively. I think the front line would just need to finish the chances. I know it's as easy and very football cliche, but our strikers need to put these chances away, and that will make things a lot easier. But I think the sign of Matt Clark's going to really help defensively. Our shape looked really good yesterday. The XG side of things, yes, we lost, and the XG side of things, but the penalty in itself brought that massively up for Swansea because apart from that, I think they were tracking at like 0.15 at one point. In I think the XG stats as well. I think it comes up to like this 80th minute, and that's when it shot up for them. And that was about it. Really didn't create too many chances. But again, a win's a win. We move on, and we hopefully have a few more this season. But let's look ahead, Tom, to deadline day because it's looming Thursday, 1st of September. And appreciate we're going to have a pod probably come out in the next couple of weeks or so around the transfer window and have the ins and the outs of it and what was a good transfer, what was a bad transfer, and how can things progress. But how active can you see Boro being in the next few days?
I can see us being quite active and bringing in at least 2 players. I know Wilder's mentioned he wants 3. Hopefully that would be the case. But overall, I have been actually quite impressed with how we've handled our business this transfer window. I think, in windows past and pre kind of Wilder, Kieran Scott era, we'd have either been kind of pulling in different directions of the way we want to go, or it'd get to the end of the window and we'd panic and sign like George Saville for 7 million and not Jed Wallace for some reason. So I think in the next few days we will be looking to address the positions that we've identified for weeks now. I think personally that Larsson's going to go down to deadline day, and I think we will end up getting him.
Interesting.
Okay. The midfield signings, I hope, kind of just go a little bit under the radar, and then it's like broken on, Monday or Tuesday that we're loaning Ampadu or something like that. But I think at least 2 signings within, the next however many days it is now until the window closes.
Yeah, I'm just glad that Tony Pulis isn't in charge anymore because he took everyone at the pub because they're a great set of lads and just ride out the rest of the transfer window when we were in desperate need of wingers at that time. But yeah, I can see he's being quite active. I think 2 to 3 signings. I think yeah, Tom. I think it'll happen. But what do you think is the most important position for us? Is it striker? Is it centre defensive midfielder? Could we go for a right centre mid, or could we do something a little bit out of left field and bring someone else in?
See, for me, I think it's centre defensive midfield.
I agree.
I'm fairly happy with our strike force as it is. I think if we get Larson on top of that, it'd be an absolute bonus, and quite a massive bonus as well because judging by what we've seen and what his stats are like, he's going to end up being a very good player. But we haven't had anyone to kind of challenge Howson or be there if Howson's suspended or injured or anything like that for season and a half now. So I think that is probably the ideal position to strengthen if we can get a younger player in there, more kind of like a long term, not so much a long term project. We don't want to be kind of signing youth players there and having them as the backup. But if we can have a long term replacement for Howson to compete with that for that position, I think that'd be the priority area for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think centre defensive midfielder really important. Howson, like we were saying there, Howson, most important player for us in terms of that position that really dictates our play, gets us going as well. And I think for me, yeah, I think if we can bring someone in to not replace Howson, but give him the competition or trying to rotate someone in there is really vital. But strikers, I mean, you can never have enough strikers. I mean, Brian Robson would have something to say about that in 97, 98, I think, where he had it was Paul Merson, Marco Branca, Hignett, Mikael Beck. I think Hamilton Ricard. I think Hamilton Ricard as well. Jamie Moreno. I mean, Andy Campbell. I think how many strikers did one man want? I think Alan Armstrong as well. If I didn't mention that, so he had abundance of strikers. So I mean, why not? I mean, bringing in Marco Branca and Paul Merson for your championship team. Absolute madness. But who knows? We could bring in some more strikers. But can we see any outgoings, Tom? Do you think anyone might leave before we go? Dale Fry, maybe?
I think we would only let Dale Fry go if it was a significantly high bid and we had a replacement lined up. I think at this moment we'd probably be looking around 7 to 8 million for him. And that's purely because I know we could have got around 15 mil a couple of seasons ago. I think that time to kind of cash in has passed now. And I think that's the kind of areas of offers we'd be fielding for him now. But I don't think we want him to leave. I think, based on what Wilder said yesterday, Fry's definitely still kind of part of the plans for the season. And I think any outgoings are just going to be youth loans at this point. I think it's going to be the likes of Coburn, Hackney, for example, going out and getting more experience under the belts on loan.
Okay, then. Well, let's move on. Let's look ahead to Watford now, Tom, because on Tuesday night, Boro travelled to Vicarage Road to play Rob Edwards' Watford. The Orns currently sit 7th in the championship table. But to get a bit more insight, we spoke to Mike from the Rookery end to get some more insight on the Orns.
Hello, Middlesbrough. This is Watford calling, and I bring you good bearings because it appears that the Hornets are, a bit crap, really. Speaking to you on Sunday, the day after a rather sobering home defeat to Queen's Park Rangers. QPR good value for the win. Every time they went forward, they looked to cause us difficulties. So a bit of a wake-up call, I think, for Rob Edwards, for the team, and also the fans. But personally, I think we'd been flattering to deceive up until that point. We were second in the table. We're now outside the playoffs, and I think that's probably a more accurate representation of where Watford's play and performances should see us. Going forward has been the biggest concern for me, despite having what's rumoured to be very, very valuable players in João Pedro and Ismail Assar. We've not really been able to get them into the game enough to ask enough questions of opposition defences. Just have a look in the goals for column in the Championship table and it tells its own story. Those problems persisted against Queen's Park Rangers, and we've seen to throw into the mix an inability to defend as well. We looked all over the shop yesterday, and from a midfield point of view, we look light there as well. Hamza Chowdhury's come in there on loan from Leicester and shored things up a little bit. So all in all, the jury is out. I mean, you have to caveat it a little bit. We don't really know what our squad is going to look like come the 1st of September. I mentioned Ismail Assar and João Pedro. Huge amount of conjecture about their future, and that's bound to have an impact on the players themselves, the squad as a whole, and of course Rob Edwards. He doesn't know which 11 he's going to be able to put out from 1 week to the next at the moment. So there are mitigating factors, but I do think that by this stage we should have a clearer idea of how we want to play. We should have a clearer idea of the formation and the patterns of play we want to be delivering. And Watford just aren't able to take control of games, and for a team that is hopeful of being at the top end of the table, that's a real concern. So lots of concerns, lots of mitigating factors, but I think for Watford at the moment there are more questions than answers. And I think from a Middlesbrough point of view, coming to Watford on Tuesday evening, I think it's a great time to play Watford. It's just before the window shuts, so that uncertainty will still be swirling around. It's also, just as a side note, it marks the 100-year anniversary of Watford's first ever game at Vicarage Road, so there's going to be a few celebrations about that. And I don't know about you guys at Middlesbrough, but whenever Watford have an event like that on a match day, the football never seems to match the excitement of that sort of celebration. So for that reason alone, I expect Middlesbrough to win. But yeah, overall, look, Watford aren't out of it. Watford are going to be hopefully challenging in some way, shape or form, but they look a bit of a mess at the moment. I think we lack shape, we lack leaders, and we lack cohesion and a genuine goal-scoring threat. Apart from that, everything's fine. And if that doesn't tempt you to buy a ticket to Vicarage Road on Tuesday night, nothing will. Enjoy the journey if you're coming down. I hope you don't enjoy it too much. But yeah, that's us. Come on, you Goldens.
Watford 5, Middlesbrough 0. It's just standard, isn't it? I think, like, Mike, thank you very much, obviously, for doing that as well. But I feel like everyone that comes on this podcast now is doing the reverse of the malt curse and just saying, we're terrible, you'll absolutely steamroll us. And then we end up getting beat. So, but Tom, what's your thoughts on the game on Tuesday? Because it seems to be a really, really big game for us, especially if you want to be in that top 6 this year. It looks like a game where you're going to have to go there and try and win.
Yeah, I think at the very least, get a draw. You need to be at least picking up points away at these teams. I still expect that Watford will be up there come the end of the season. They'll probably go for about 4 managers up until that point, so one of them will get it right. I know with Watford, they are still a strong team. It's always a difficult game when you play them. Fully expect it to be on Tuesday night, and I think it just depends which Boro turn up. I think if we look as solid as we did yesterday, we could still take something from the game. We just need to avoid turning up and playing like we did at Reading, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think with them as well, and I know Mike said they're on balance at the moment, and leadership's a bit like hard to come by, and they're in a bit of a transitional phase. And although that's right, that there is a lot of quality there. I think they're going to be still in and around it come the end of the season. There's enough quality there within that side to really put a marker down for the season and also make things really difficult for us. But I think if there's one place to go where you can try and get a result and really show that that the start of the season was a bit of teething issues, this could be the place to do it. And I think if we go there, try and get a result, that can really give us enough confidence to go in the next few games against Sunderland and so on, and try and go with a load of confidence. So, what's your predictions, Tom? What are you going to go for? Are you going to go for a Boro win, draw, defeat, match abandoned? What do you think?
I'm going for 1-1 here. Personally, I can't remember too many examples of Boro actually getting points at Vicarage Road. I remember they're always quite tough games for us. So I think if we go there, we get a point. That's a decent result to build off, and then if we come out with that next game, if we go into the next 2 games against Watford and Sunderland, come out with 4 points, including a win against Sunderland, I'll be quite happy.
Yeah, I'm the same. 4 points would be fantastic, I think. But I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go there with confidence. I think that we could, probably get a result. I think I'm hoping we win 2-1 away from home. And I think Rodrigo Muniz is going to score his first Boro goal. But what are your predictions as well? Leave them in the YouTube comments below. But also tweet us. What is going to be your prediction for the game on Tuesday? And also let us know your thoughts on the performance as well from Saturday, and see what were the positives, what were the negatives, and what do you think Boro could still work on. Just tweet us at the Boro_breakdown, or let us know in the YouTube comments below. But Tom, thank you very much for joining me as always. And to the listeners and the viewers, thank you very much for watching as well. The Boro are finally up and running. But right now, this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast. And that was all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.